And as a result of tonight, as a result of the people of Wisconsin defying the media, defying the pundits, I am more and more convinced that our campaign is going to earn the 1,237 delegates needed to win the Republican nomination.
Wisconsin voters did exactly what they were predicted to do, almost. For while they gave Ted Cruz the resounding win he wanted against Donald Trump, they did not bite into everything Bernie Sanders tossed them in his battle against Hillary Clinton. If one were to examine some of the exit polling, however, it could be a fascinating glimpse into what the voters not only in Wisconsin but across the nation are thinking when it comes to whom they will choose, and it will not bode well for some. Welcome back, the political science professor at Marquette University with an eye on the numbers, Dr. Paul Nolette. Dr. Nolette, let's go ahead and get to last night. Anything come out of this as you look at the numbers and start to tear things apart that was odd, unique, you didn't really expect?
Well, I think the ultimate results were about what we expected, although both Cruz and Sanders, in terms of their percentage victories, was a little bit higher than expected overall. Trump did still end up with a handful of delegates out of Wisconsin. Looks like he won 2 congressional districts, which means 6 delegates. And Sanders is going to net about 11 or so delegates out of Wisconsin.
Fair to say, though, when you look at the Democratic side, and I believe we talked about this even before the primary itself, Bernie Sanders, he got the double-digit win that he needed against Hillary Clinton. But if you look at it, there were some people saying that he could have done even better, that he should have done even better. And that's why some people are today is thinking maybe they didn't quite bite on everything that Bernie Sanders gave him. Yes or no?
Yeah, I think that that's ultimately true. Wisconsin should have been a good state to begin with for Bernie Sanders. And, it was an impressive victory, certainly about 13 points or so. But, in terms of delegates, he's still facing a very, very difficult delegate calendar moving forward.
We all know, if you follow politics, that you cannot be successful unless you get some crossover, but you've got to get the independents. Where did the indies go last night?
Well, the independents, by and large, on both sides, if they voted on the Republican side, did, Trump actually did pretty well among independents in general. I think a lot of Republican-leaning independents did end up voting for Cruz, probably more than expected. On the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders really cleaned up with the independents that voted on the Democratic side, and it was much closer among registered Democrats.
The one group that we continue to talk about time and time again is women. And we're going to say something that's going to argue a lot of Trump supporters, but hell be damned. Let's go right forward here. Donald Trump is not doing well with women. Did it come through again in the numbers last night?
It did. And, some of what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, which is that even just among Republican women, Trump has unfavorable numbers that are approaching 50% or even exceeding them in some cases. And so we saw quite a gender gap in the voting here in Wisconsin, and it's something that the Trump camp has to be really, really concerned about in the last few weeks of the primary cycle here.
As you've been looking at numbers, have you ever seen numbers like that for women to go so anti against a single candidate?
No, and just to be frank, if the numbers stay that way, I don't see any way that Trump could be competitive in a general election. After all, in the last 2 cycles, 2008, 2012, women were 53% of the electorate. So you're talking about a huge chunk of voters that if you have unfavorable ratings that high, it's going to be really, really difficult to win.
Here's something interesting, though, because we talk to a lot of women voters who say that they will vote for Donald Trump. Nothing will change their mind. But then you look at something like this. In your experience and looking at the numbers and all the reams of years that we have here, does something like this have a momentum effect? Certainly it will get to the people who already don't want Donald Trump. But can something like this change the mind of somebody who is already in his camp if they are a female voter?
It's possible, although I do think, one thing that we've seen throughout the campaign is that committed Trump voters are very enthusiastic about Trump and very committed. And, the number of women voters who are enthusiastic, committed Trump voters is actually relatively small, even within the Republican Party. But, so I would imagine that at least among that group will stay with Trump. But it's a pretty small number even within the party.
But let's look then at the exit polls, because a lot of the voters coming out, and this caught me, they said the nominee should be the candidate who receives the most delegates, regardless of whether that person clinches the 1237 majority outright. I found that fascinating because so many times we're sitting here talking about how rules are rules and you basically got to follow them. Donald Trump has said this. Let's get the majority, not just the delegate count. And it seems as if people, the Republicans, are going for that.
Right. And right from these exit polls, a majority of people said exactly whoever goes into the convention with the most delegates should be the nominee. So at least, this can continue being a big talking point for Donald Trump, because I think even after the Wisconsin results, Trump is very likely to go into the convention with the most delegates. So,
all right. We'll continue to follow this because I have a feeling that things are going to, it's just that little momentum that comes out of a place like Wisconsin. Dr. Paul Nolette, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your expertise. Now, Ted Cruz can celebrate all he wants after Wisconsin, but there is a rock-solid line in the sand that at this moment he is unable to cross, and it will keep him from becoming president. That is top of the menu for the political animal next on the Hard.